Dade Phelan has two new opponents for Speaker, John Smithy and Ana Maria Ramos. We're going to talk about how a Democrat entering the race for Speaker for the first time in modern history changes the dynamics and makes it even harder for Dade Phelan to retain his speakership. One of the most liberal Republicans in the Texas House has come out publicly, and this is somebody who has sided with unions for a long time and has now said that school choice will pass and the teacher unions will lose. Also, the Democrat mayor of Houston seems to be taking a stronger and more serious scalpel to his own budget than Texas appropriators seem to be taking to the Texas budget. So we're going to talk about that as well. Let's get to the show. I posted a 3 to 4 minute update on the speaker's race on X Friday or Saturday. For those of you who want to go, some of it will be repeated today. In that, I still had a little bit of facial hair left from my vacation, and 90% of everyone voted that I should shave, which didn't really matter because my wife had already mandated that as kind of a requirement for peace in our home. And so it was coming off anyways, but y'all unfortunately joined the masses in a very negative and just, I would say, attempted to be discouraging in many of your rhetoric that you sent. But I was not discouraged. So just in case you were wondering, don't worry, I was not discouraged in any way. In that speaker update I posted, I talked about Ana Maria Ramos, John Smithy. In fact, I actually was talking about her race before she announced. But here's the quick reality of where we're at in the speaker's race. So 5 Republicans have announced against Dade Phelan: Shelby Slauson, Tom Oliverson, David Cook, John Smithy, James Frank. All of them have committed in some form or fashion to quite a few reforms in the process of how the Texas House operates, to the extent that it would make it harder for whoever is speaker to cut the same deals they cut with Democrats. As Democrats are seeing the momentum build against Dade, they're not sure he's even planning on trying to retain their speakership, is going to go all the way. So they're very splintered in their potential approaches. But Ana Maria Ramos makes it even harder for them because you probably haven't heard of her. Most of the listeners of this show aren't super familiar. I call her the AOC of the Texas House. So she is not with the leadership team. She's not with Joe Moody. She's not with Trey Martinez-Fisher. She's not with Terry Canales. She's not with Sinfronia Thompson. These are leaders in the Democrat caucus. Adonna Howard, other people like that. Mary Gonzalez. These are leadership-oriented Democrats. Ana Maria Ramos is not. The problem is, if she is not voting for Dade, it takes the votes he needs from 12 to 13 or 14 or 15 or 16. And that's very uncomfortable for him because people don't even think he has 12. They think he has 7 or 8 right now. So a Democrat entering simply encourages more people to join what I would call the coalition that is most centered in reality right now, that is building against Dade Phelan and for a reform-minded speaker. So the Quorum Report and several other people have been putting out information about how these 45 to 50 to 55 to 60 Republicans in the Texas House are considering coalescing behind somebody for speaker of all these 5 candidates. And that is causing Dade Phelan and his team to be even more concerned. Before I keep going down this path, just to kind of put a nail in the coffin as to how resolved people are as far as Dade Phelan's future, we're going to go to a very brief clip from a panel at the Texas Values Convention. And this is Briscoe Cain, Shelby Slauson, James Frank, and Tom Oliverson talking about the future of Dade Phelan's speakership. So let's go to this clip.
Is Speaker Phelan's time really already over? Or is there any chance that he holds on to his position as Speaker?
His time is done.
James Frank.
If Republicans can work together, we're absolutely done.
There you go. That's it.
Let's go.
If the ball's rolling, it's over.
Yeah. Representative Slauson.
Done.
Good.
There you go.
There is a difference between saying I'm running for speaker and saying Dade is done. and Tom and Shelby and James and Briscoe saying that is a very good thing. Now, James Frank is the only one who added a qualifier. He said, hey, if Republicans come together, and what he's hinting at is the possibility that Dustin Burrows and Drew Darby and some of these other people decide to try to get 12 to 13 to 14 people to cut a deal with Democrats and go all the way to the floor. They shouldn't do that. It would be a bad idea if they did do that, but they might decide to temporarily hold power for another 2 years. It's much harder for Dade Phelan to convince people to do that if they think that 50 or 60 or 70 people will vote against the speaker on the House floor. That's a problem. And that's a problem that is very uncomfortable for the people that are being asked to consider that. Now, Dade is not actively working it. He just keeps trying to get people to wait. That's his whole team. All they can do is tell all these guys, just wait, just wait, just wait, just wait. Don't do anything. Don't support anybody. Don't get on anybody's team. Don't put it out anything that tells people that you're not with me. Because they need to hope that Democrats win some more races in November. And by the way, Dade Phelan today, and I hope this changes, but as of today, I don't know any flippable seat that Dade Phelan is actively involved in trying to turn red. I hope he does. He's told people I'm focused on November. The problem is every single seat that goes from blue to red makes it even harder for him to cut a deal with the Democrats. We actually have another clip that Chairman Briscoe Cain posted that we're going to go to real quick. This is a conversation because I want y'all to understand the dynamics. This is Denise Villalobos, who's running in the Corpus Christi area to replace Abel Herrero. And this is a district that Trump lost by 10%, Abbott lost by 4%, and is currently trending significantly more Republican. I mean, if you rewound 6, 8, 10 years ago, it would be even more Democrat. But this is a heavily Hispanic district that's moving red and is winnable in November. And I want you to hear what Denise had to say about the issue of Democrat chairs in her district. Let's go to this clip.
Which includes no Democratic chairs. That was a large item in this past state convention. And let me tell you what my opponent is saying. So Solomon Ortiz Jr., he previously served in the legislature for 3 years, 14 years ago, House District 33. His father was a congressman also during that time. They both got knocked out during the Tea Party movement, both of them in 2010. Dad by Blake Barenthal, my opponent by Raul Torres. And he is telling people as he goes out, these are his two talking points. One, I don't know if y'all know me, but my dad was Congressman Solomon Ortiz. The number two thing he is saying is, I previously served 3 terms. This would be my 4th. I am in line to be a chairman of a committee.
This is not just a Republican primary issue. Solomon Ortiz is a very liberal, progressive Democrat who's trying to run to go back into the Texas House and is literally telling community leaders who aren't sure if they're Republican or Democrat, vote for me. I'm in line for a chairmanship. Think of that. The Republicans run the state, but he's saying, if you really want somebody who's going to do a lot of powerful things for our community, it's me, Solomon Ortiz. That's what these Democrat chairmanships give Democrats as talking points during the November election. So all of a sudden, these Chamber of Commerce guys who honestly just want to be with the winner and somebody who's going to get the most for them and their business and their community can get swayed by that. It's insane. And again, goes back to my point that Dade Phelan isn't even trying to flip these seats right now. And I hope he does. I hope he does. So where we're at in the speaker's race is that the coalition against Dade continues to build. And the amount of Republicans that go, he doesn't have a path, continues to build. And then there are some people who are just have their hands tied behind their back because they've said, I'll support whoever wins the caucus. Okay. So it's tough for Dade. And now Anna Maria Ramos is running, so a Democrat might even take some Democrat votes. Anyways, It is a good time to be a reformer in the Texas House. That's something I've said for a long time, and it continues to be true today. It doesn't mean that everything's about to be fixed. It doesn't mean that rainbows and sunshine are about to come down on the state of Texas. It doesn't mean that there will never be any reason to have any friction in any way. But what it does mean is that if these reforms are put in place, the conflict that exists within the Republican Party will decrease, both in frequency and in severity. Meaning the battles we have with some of these forces will be smaller and they will be less frequent. That's what reforming the Texas House does. It means that Republicans are going to be more Republican, which will put them less at odds with their own Republican voters. That makes sense. This is very basic. By the way, as a result of these primary victories, Ken King came out and told the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. Ken King is a very liberal Republican from Pampa, Texas, the Panhandle, okay? And his district goes from, kind of around Lubbock, not in Lubbock, but around the Lubbock area, all the way up to kind of around the Amarillo area, but doesn't have any of the major cities in his district. Tons of rural communities. And he has been a teacher union shill his entire time in the legislature. No offense, Ken King. And Ken even came out and said, the votes are there, school choice is passing. This is good. This is teacher union Democrat alliances. There's this alliance between the most liberal Republicans in the Texas House, the Democrat caucus, and teacher unions. And when members of that alliance are saying, we're going to lose next session because of all these people that won the primaries, that is a very good thing. Also this week, we got some very positive news from the Texas GOP. But before we go there, let's take a quick break.
Hey folks, Chris Salcedo here. I've got something special for you, the Salcedo Storm podcast. As your friendly, liberty-loving Latino, I bring you a mix of engaging discussions to help us fight for our state and our conservative values. It's the perfect way to stay informed and engaged in what's happening around you. So, what are you waiting for? Don't miss out on the storm of information and entertainment coming your way. The Salcedo Storm podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
The Republican Party of Texas put out a press release just a couple days ago. Texas GOP Chairman Abraham George announces major investment into legislative races. Now, this is at the same time that I'm telling you, I don't even know what Dade Phelan's doing. But let me read a little bit of what the Texas GOP is doing for those of you who supported Abraham George or didn't, but want him to succeed. Today, Texas GOP Chairman Abraham George unveiled an ambitious new initiative aimed at strengthening the Republican Party's presence in competitive state legislative districts across Texas. The announcement detailed the Texas GOP's commitment to knocking on over 100,000 doors in key battleground areas ahead of the upcoming election cycle. Quote, this is from Abraham George, "This is a pivotal moment for Texas, and we are doubling down on our commitment to engage directly with voters across the state. We must work to expand our Republican majorities in the legislature, and we have a clear path to do so. I am committed to raising the funds necessary to ensure that the Texas GOP has a larger canvassing operation than in previous election cycles." Great move in the right direction. I'm appreciative of this kind of positioning by the Texas GOP. And if we do expand in South Texas in both the Senate and the House, we will not only make it harder for people like Dade to keep his uniparty coalition together, but we will widen the path for conservative policy passing in 2025. Mayor John Whitmire, speaking of Democrats, was a senator in Texas for a long time and is now the mayor of Houston. I saw a couple different quotes from John that I think are remarkable and worth recognizing. So one quote he gave Greg Grugan, who's a Houston area reporter, was this. He said, how many executive VPs Metro had when I took office? This is like one of the departments in Houston. 250 to 300 grand. These are vice presidents that are making 250 to 300 grand. They had 29 people at that level. He said, you want to know how many people worked in the marketing department when I took office? 50 marketing people for just one metro in Houston, right? He's talking about the gloat and the waste in government spending. So then he gives Greg Rugen another quote, and this is the quote. I am not going to do a quick fix of raising property taxes without the public having a say. I am not going to look at taxes until I can tell Houstonians I've done everything possible to cut out waste, duplication, and corruption. I want you to think about that. The mayor of Houston in a major Democrat city is saying, I don't even want to talk about raising property taxes until I can assure the people of Houston that we have done every single thing we can to cut out waste, duplication, and corruption. Now, I will tell you that if you go to and follow any legislator that is involved right now in the appropriations process in the House or the Senate, you don't hear any statements like this. Nothing. The only thing I have heard people say in the Senate and the House right now is different items they want funded out of the surplus, which is extra taxpayer money, over collected. Michael Sullivan was recently reminding me in a conversation we had about an early battle they used to have. And I don't remember this. I think this was at the time that I was my dad was either in the legislature when I was 17 or 19. I didn't follow it as much that session. I followed it a little bit, but there was these arguments because the appropriators would always call the surplus unappropriated funds. Okay. So they would come into the session and say, hey guys, just to let you know, we have 20 billion in unappropriated funds. The implication was we didn't know we were going to have $20 billion. And if we had $20 billion, we would have appropriated the $20 billion. So this $20 billion is money that should have been appropriated to something that wasn't appropriated to something. So now we need to appropriate it. That was the idea, which means that the assumption is you're spending it. Now there was a fight to call that same pile of money a surplus, which is over collected taxes. That's what a surplus is. We collected more taxes than we thought we were going to, and than we needed, because we passed a budget that we said was fine. If you set a budget and then all of a sudden you get a bonus, you should save that bonus, okay? Or you should invest that bonus. What you shouldn't do is go, oh, I can just increase all my living expenses based on this bonus I got. It's not unappropriated funds. It's a surplus. It's over collected money that you could return to taxpayers in the form of property tax relief. And when you listen to legislators in the entire Capitol, all you keep hearing from them is large lists of things they plan on spending all this money on, which means very little property tax relief at the end of the day. I appreciate John Whitmire talking about what he's talking about in Houston. And I would hope that appropriators in the Senate and the House would also start using similar rhetoric when talking about the Texas budget. We are moving Texas in the right direction, guys. Towards the November election, in the primaries, for the legislative process, as the Texas GOP, but there's a lot of work left to do. My wife is going to have a baby any day. Okay. And so I've actually pre-recorded a show with Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, specifically kind of overviewing the budget and our path to property tax relief. And I've already recorded this so I can give you a little bit of a preview. It's with Van Skyn, who's an economist, worked at the Office of Management and Budget with Trump. And then Andrew McVeigh, who's the president of Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. If you're not familiar with their work, you should be. You should consider supporting their work. You should consider donating to them before the end of the year. You should sign up for their email lists. Great organization that I'm very supportive of. If you're in the San Antonio area, you should let me know because I'm actually hosting a little lunch for them before the end of the year. So if you're in San Antonio, go to lukemacias.com, let me know, and I'd love to have you for lunch with Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. I'm previewing this because I want to give you, it is kind of a wonky conversation, okay? Because Vance is kind of a dork. No offense, Vance. And so he's just using all these terms about all the budget process. But my goal was to try to give y'all a little bit more of an insight into how the budget gets made, the discussions happening now, what the budget looks like, and how this is going to affect the amount of property tax relief that you can see and how much it affects how realistic eliminating property tax is. Because the only way that eliminating property taxes is realistic is if our appropriators just take all the massive spending increases they've done and just freeze it from there and use the rest of the extra money they collect to provide property tax relief. And if we do that, we can get rid of your property taxes, especially your M&O school property tax. So with that being said, I hope y'all enjoy that. It might be next week's episode. If the baby hasn't come by next week, I'll record another show like this normally. But I have pre-recorded this show just so we have something to give me a week off when our fourth child comes into the world. And if you are thinking about anyone to pray for, you can pray for Misha, my wife, as she's being a saint and preparing for this awesome, awesome event in our family. May God bless you, and may God bless Texas.
Do you want to get your news from people who share your values? Texas Scorecard, real news for real Texans.